The dining room of Caldwell Table glowed under warm amber light, every table draped in white linen. It was the kind of restaurant where the price of a single bottle of wine could feed a working family for a week. In the middle of all that elegance, a young woman stood frozen beside table 7, her hands trembling at her sides. Her name tag read Anna, but that was not her real name. A small puddle of red wine spread across the white tablecloth like a wound, and the man seated in front of her, a heavy-set gentleman in a charcoal suit, was rising from his chair with his face turning the color of the spilled wine itself. "You have got to be kidding me," Bernie Langford said, his voice loud enough to carry across the entire dining room. "Do you have any idea what this shirt cost? Do you have any idea who I am?" The young woman lowered her eyes. "Sir, I never touched the glass. I was only setting down the bottle." "Excuses," Bernie snapped. "I have been a regular here for 7 years. 7 years, and they hire someone like you to ruin my evening." Conversations at the surrounding tables faltered. A few diners glanced over, then quickly looked back at their plates. That was when Clinton Mercer arrived. The branch manager moved through the dining room with the smooth confidence of a man who had spent decades perfecting the art of pleasing wealthy customers at the expense of everyone else. He wore a gray vest over a white shirt, and his thinning hair was combed with such care that it looked painted on. "Mr. Langford, I am so very sorry," Clinton said. "Whatever this young woman has done, please allow me to make it right." He turned to the waitress, and his polite smile vanished. "What did you do?" "Sir, I did not ask for an explanation. I asked what you did." The young woman, whose real name was Estrid Caldwell, felt her stomach tighten. She could end this entire scene with one sentence. She could simply say her name. But if she did, the man standing in front of her would put on a different face for the rest of the evening, and she would never see how far he was willing to go. So she stayed silent, and she waited. "Apologize to Mr. Langford," Clinton said. "I did not spill the wine, sir. I do not care who spilled the wine. The customer is upset. Apologize to him now, or you can collect your final paycheck on your way out." The dining room fell into the kind of quiet that happens when 20 people are pretending not to listen and failing. In the far corner of the room, beside a large window streaked with rain, a man in a slightly wrinkled work shirt set down his glass of water. His name was Henry Walker, and he had been watching the entire scene unfold from the moment Bernie raised his voice. Beside him, his 6-year-old daughter Bonnie was holding a worn stuffed rabbit against her chest, her eyes wide and unblinking. What none of them knew, not Bernie, not Clinton, not even Henry himself, was that within a few hours every single person in that dining room would learn the truth about the woman they were watching being humiliated. 30 minutes earlier, the rain had been falling steadily over the city, the kind of cold March rain that turned every sidewalk into a mirror. Henry Walker had just finished a service call at a small bakery 2 blocks away, repairing a temperamental convection oven that had been rattling for weeks. His hands smelled faintly of grease and copper, and his shoulders ached in the familiar way they always ached at the end of a long day. He was 29 years old, broad in the shoulders, with dark brown hair cut short, and a few days of stubble. He had been a single father for almost 3 years now. His wife had passed away the winter Bonnie turned 3, and from that day forward Henry had learned to be 2 parents at once, and a working man on top of it. Bonnie sat in the passenger seat, her cheeks a little flushed from the doctor's office where they had spent the afternoon. She had been running a low fever for 2 days. The diner Henry usually took her to had closed for renovations. The pizza place was full, and the rain was getting heavier. "Daddy," Bonnie said, peering out at the streetlights. "I am hungry." Henry glanced at the map on his phone. There was one restaurant a few blocks ahead that was still open, and had a kitchen warm enough for a fevered child. Caldwell Table. He had never been inside, but he knew it was the kind of place where the bill for 2 people could equal a week of his grocery budget. He also knew, looking at his daughter's tired face, that she needed a real meal more than he needed his pride. "How about a bowl of soup, sweetheart? With crackers? With crackers?" When he pulled into the small lot beside Caldwell Table, He hesitated for a moment before turning off the engine. He looked down at his shirt, at the faint smudge of grease near his elbow that he had tried to wash out in the bakery's sink. He looked at his work boots, scuffed at the toes. He looked at Bonnie in her purple jacket, holding her rabbit, and his chest tightened with a stubborn, gentle love. The hostess seated them at a small table near the window, in a corner where the light from the chandelier did not quite reach. Henry suspected correctly that she had chosen the corner on purpose. Bonnie climbed into her chair, set her rabbit on the table beside her, and folded her hands in her lap. "Daddy," she whispered. "Should we be here?" Henry leaned forward and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Sweetheart, you deserve to sit anywhere you know how to behave. And you behave better than anybody I know." Bonnie smiled, and the smile reached her tired eyes. The waitress who came to their table moved differently from the others. There was something about the way she observed the room, the way her eyes catalogued the staff and the layout. But her smile, when she turned it toward Bonnie, was warm and unforced. "Hi there," she said, crouching slightly so she was at Bonnie's eye level. "What is your name?" "Bonnie," the little girl said softly. "Bonnie, die. That is one of my favorite names." "And who is this, Mr. Buttons?" "Hello, Mr. Buttons. It is very nice to meet you." Astrid Caldwell was 27 years old, the chief executive officer of Caldwell Table Group, a chain of restaurants her father had founded and built over the course of 40 years. He had retired the previous spring and handed her the reins, and from the moment she took over, the complaints had started arriving. Anonymous letters from servers who had been there for years. Reports of a manager who screamed at staff in the back of house, who made employees apologize to wealthy customers, no matter who was actually at fault. The Caldwell Table on Beacon Street had lost more staff in 18 months than it had in the previous 5 years combined. Every time Astrid had asked the Human Resources Department to investigate, the reports had come back clean. Too clean. So she had done what her father had once done, decades earlier when he was still building the company from a single storefront. She had put on an apron, pinned on a name tag with a fake name, and walked in as a new hire. She told Clinton Mercer she was being transferred from another branch. He had barely looked at her. What he had not noticed was that under her apron, Astrid still wore the elegant black dress with a soft V neckline that she had put on that morning for an investors' meeting. She did not expect anyone in this dining room to look closely enough to wonder why a waitress was wearing a designer dress under her uniform. "What can I get you two tonight?" she asked Henry. Henry glanced at the prices and chose the smallest soup on the menu, a simple chicken broth. "And could we possibly split it? My daughter has a bit of a fever." Astrid did not blink. She did not glance at his clothes, or his hands, or his boots. "The kitchen has a small portion of chicken and rice that we make for staff meals. It is gentle on the stomach. I will bring her one of those. No charge." Henry hesitated. "I do not want to ask for anything." "You did not ask," Astrid said. "I offered." "There is a difference." She gave Bonnie one more smile, then turned and walked toward the kitchen. Henry watched her go, and although he did not know it yet, he had just met the person who would change his life. While Astrid was in the kitchen, Henry began to notice the rhythms of the dining room around him. A young busboy dropped a folded napkin near the bar. Clinton Mercer materialized beside him within seconds, and bent to whisper something into the boy's ear. The boy's face flushed red. He nodded quickly and hurried away with his tray. A waitress carrying a tray of water glasses passed too close to Clinton. He did not raise his voice, but his eyes followed her like a man marking a debt to be collected later. The waitress's shoulders tightened. She did not look at him. Bonnie was watching too. She had finished arranging Mr. Buttons in his proper position and was now studying the room with the same quiet attention her father had taught her to bring to anything important. "Daddy," she said. "Why does that man talk to them like that?" Henry took a slow breath. "Some people, sweetheart, think their job makes them bigger than other people. Is he their boss? Right now, yes. That does not make him bigger." Henry smiled. "No, baby. It does not. In another part of the restaurant, The door swung open, and Bernie Langford walked in. He did not have a reservation, but Clinton greeted him as if he were royalty. Two regular customers who had been waiting at the bar were politely informed that there had been a small mix-up, and they were ushered to a smaller table near the back. Bernie was guided to the best seat in the house, the round table by the second window. "Mr. Langford, your usual?" "Of course," Bernie said. "And tell whoever is on the floor tonight that I expect proper service." Astrid returned to Henry's table with a small bowl of chicken and rice for Bonnie and a fresh basket of warm bread. She set them down gently and gave the little girl a wink. Bonnie giggled, but before Astrid could leave, Clinton appeared at her elbow. "Mr. Langford is at table 7, he said quietly. "You will take care of him tonight." "Yes, sir." "And Anna, Mr. Langford does not tolerate mistakes." She nodded. He walked away. Henry watched the exchange and felt something tighten in his chest. He knew that tone. He had heard it in foremen on construction sites, in supervisors on factory floors. What happened at table 7 happened quickly, and yet it would replay in Henry's mind for the rest of his life. Astrid arrived with the bottle of wine Bernie had ordered, an expensive Cabernet from the restaurant's reserve list. She set the bottle down, presented the label, and began to pour. Bernie was in the middle of telling his guests about a real estate deal that was going to make him a great deal of money. He was gesturing with his hand as he spoke, and as Astrid leaned forward to fill the second glass, his elbow swung outward in a careless arc. The glass tipped. The wine spilled. The bottle, still in Astrid's hand, was nowhere near the glass when it fell. "Are you serious right now?" Bernie thundered, jumping up from his chair. "Are you serious? Sir, look at this. Look at this." He gestured at the spreading red stain. "Do you have any idea what you just did to my evening, sir? I never touched the glass." "Your arm. Are you accusing me of spilling my own wine?" His voice rose. The dining room fell into an uncomfortable hush. Astrid kept her face perfectly composed, although Henry, watching from his corner, could see her hand trembling slightly where she still held the bottle. Clinton was already crossing the room. "Mr. Langford, I'm so sorry." "Anna, what did you do?" "Mr. Mercer, I did not touch the glass." Clinton turned to her with a face of stone. "Apologized to Mr. Langford." "Now, sir, with respect, I said apologize." The room held its breath. Astrid lowered her gaze. Slowly, carefully, with the particular kind of dignity that only comes from refusing to break, she folded her hands in front of her and spoke the words she did not believe. "Mr. Langford, I am sorry for any inconvenience this evening has caused you." Bernie made a small sound of satisfaction. "That is more like it. People like you need to remember who you are serving. People like me built this city. People like you keep its tables wiped down. Do not forget the difference." A woman in a green dress reached for her purse as if she might leave, then changed her mind. The silence in the dining room was heavy and shameful, the silence of 40 people pretending not to see. In the corner, Bonnie set down her spoon. She watched the tall waitress with the trembling hands lower her eyes, and she watched her father grip his glass of water until his knuckles turned white. "Daddy," she whispered. Henry did not answer. "Daddy," she whispered again. She did not do anything wrong. Why does she have to say sorry? Henry closed his eyes for a single second. "Daddy," Bonnie said, her voice smaller still. "She is going to cry." Henry opened his eyes and looked at his daughter. He saw the soft trust in her face, the kind of trust a child only has when she still believes the world is a place where wrongs get answered. He thought of every lesson he had ever tried to teach her. Tell the truth. Help people who cannot help themselves. Be kind even when no one is watching. He thought of his late wife, who had once told him that being a parent did not mean being perfect. It meant being honest, even when honesty cost something. If he stayed in his chair, every word he had ever said to his daughter about courage would become a lie. He set down his glass. He laid his hand gently on Bonnie's shoulder. Sweetheart, he said quietly, I want you to stay right here. Keep eating your soup, and hold Mr. Buttons, and no matter what happens, I do not want you to be scared. Can you do that for me? She nodded. Doing the right thing does not always have to be loud, he said, but it has to be done. Henry stood up. He had spent his entire adult life working in places where the best compliment was that no one had noticed him at all, that the freezer ran, that the gas line was tight, that the exhaust hood pulled clean air. When he stood up in that dining room, in his slightly wrinkled work shirt and his scuffed boots, no one looked at him for the first 3 seconds. Then he began to walk toward table 7. He stopped a few feet from Bernie's chair. He did not raise his voice. He simply spoke, in a tone that any working man would have recognized as the tone you use when you have already made up your mind. She did not spill that wine. Bernie turned slowly. Excuse me, I said. She did not spill that wine. I have been sitting right there for the last 45 minutes. I saw your elbow knock the glass. If this restaurant has cameras, the footage will say the same thing I am saying. The dining room went perfectly still. Clinton Mercer was the first to recover. Sir, this does not concern you. Please sit down. It concerns me, Henry said, because my daughter is watching. Bernie's face shifted from outrage to a sneer. He looked Henry up and down, taking in the worn work shirt, the boots, the calluses on his hands. He let out a short, dismissive laugh. And who exactly are you, friend? Henry kept his voice level. I am the person who saw the truth. Bernie did not like that answer. Let me guess, he said. You walked in here with the kid, you ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, and now you want to play hero in front of her. Is that it? Henry did not flinch. I came in here, he said, because my daughter has a fever and it is raining. I came in here because this was the closest place that was warm. I do not care what you think of my shirt. I care what you just did to that woman. Clinton stepped between them. He had felt the room turning, and he did not like it. Sir, I am going to ask you one more time to return to your seat. If you cannot, I will have to ask you to leave. Did you watch the cameras yet? Henry asked. Sir, the cameras are not your concern. They will be when this gets reviewed. That is enough. Clinton raised his voice for the first time. You are disturbing our other guests. You are upsetting Mr. Langford. I am going to ask you to step outside. Henry glanced toward the corner. Bonnie was standing now, a few inches from her chair, her rabbit pressed against her chest. Her face was pale. Henry felt something inside him bend, but it did not break. I can leave, he said quietly. He turned to look at Bernie, and then at Clinton, and he raised his voice just enough to be heard by every table. I can leave. But I will not let my daughter grow up in a world where good people are humiliated for wearing aprons. I will not teach her that staying quiet is the safest way to be a person. If that is the lesson this place gives, then this place will not have my money tonight, or any night. He looked at Astrid. The waitress's eyes were full of something Henry could not quite name. Not gratitude. Something deeper. You did not deserve any of that, he said gently. Then he reached into his pocket, set down twice the price of their meal on the table, and walked back to his daughter. He picked her up without a word. She buried her face in his shoulder. He carried her past the silent tables, past the hostess stand, and out into the rain. The door closed behind them. The dining room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then Bernie Langford laughed and called for another bottle of wine. The conversations slowly resumed. Clinton glided through the dining room, soothing customers, refilling glasses. He even patted Astrid on the shoulder and told her, in front of 3 other staff members, that he was proud of her for handling herself professionally. Astrid said, "Thank you." She said it because she had work to do. She walked into the back of house, past the line cooks, past the dish pit, into the small staff hallway where the lockers stood in a quiet row. There, she rested her forehead against the cool metal of one of the lockers and let herself, for one full breath, feel everything. A voice spoke softly behind her. Anna, Dayun. Are you all right? Astrid turned. The young woman from the kitchen, the one Clinton had snapped at earlier in the evening, was standing in the hallway holding a clean dish towel. Her name tag read Amanda. I am fine. Thank you. It should not have made you apologize. I know. Amanda hesitated. It happens a lot. I am sorry. We tell each other not to bother filing complaints. They never go anywhere. Has anyone ever stood up for the staff? Amanda's lips trembled. No. Not until that man tonight. Astrid nodded slowly. She thanked Amanda, took the towel, and stepped into the small office where she had been pretending to study the seating charts. She closed the door, took her phone out of her apron pocket, and opened a private application that pulled up the internal records of the entire Caldwell Table Group. She typed in the branch code. She sorted complaints by date. 3 line cooks had quit in the past 4 weeks alone. 2 waitresses had filed complaints about Clinton, both withdrawn within days. Customer satisfaction was high in the public reviews. Internal staff retention was the worst in the chain. Clinton's monthly reports showed none of it. She set the phone down on the desk, and for one long moment she looked out the small window at the rain. She thought about the man in the wrinkled work shirt, about the way he had picked up his daughter without a word, about the way he had quietly laid down twice the price of his meal because he refused to leave a debt, even with a place that had insulted him. He did not know who she was. That was what made it real. 3 hours later, the dining room was packed for the most important event Caldwell Table had hosted in months. A private dinner of investors, suppliers, and food industry executives filled every table. Bernie Langford was among them, holding court near the front, gesturing with a glass of bourbon. Clinton Mercer stood at the entrance with his hands folded behind his back, smiling a smile so wide it looked painful. In the kitchen, however, the world was falling apart. The center range stopped holding temperature. The exhaust hood began to throw warning lights. The control panel locked itself into emergency standby and refused to be reset. The head chef, a stout man named Gus, was shouting into the phone at the maintenance company, who told him their nearest technician was an hour and a half away. An hour and a half. The first courses were already being served. The second courses required the central range. Without the range, the menu collapsed in 20 minutes. Clinton stormed into the kitchen. What is going on back here? The system is locked, Gus said. We cannot override it. If we force it, we risk a gas hazard. Then, unlock it. That is not how it works, Clinton. Clinton's face went red. He grabbed the phone, demanded to speak to the maintenance company, then hung up without solving anything. He paced. He swore. He did not see Amanda standing by the dish pit, looking at the broken control panel, thinking very hard. She thought about the man in the wrinkled work shirt who had walked out of the dining room 3 hours earlier carrying his daughter. She thought about a small lunch counter 4 blocks away where, 2 weeks ago, that same man had spent an entire morning under their broken oven, and walked out with grease on his hands and a smile on the owner's face. She had been picking up a sandwich there. She had asked his name. He had said Henry, and the diner had his card on the wall by the cash register. His card was probably still there. Amanda slipped out the back. She ran through the alley to the diner, came back with the card, and dialed the number with shaking fingers. Henry's truck was already turning into his apartment lot when his phone began to ring. Bonnie was asleep in the back seat, Mr. Buttons tucked into the curve of her arm. Mr. Walker? Yes, my name is Amanda. I work at Caldwell Table. I know you were there earlier tonight. I know you had every reason to never want to hear from us again. But our central range is locked. Our investor dinner is collapsing, and the staff is going to take the blame. Please. I would not call if there was anyone else. Henry sat in his truck in the rain. He looked at his daughter in the rearview mirror. He thought about everything he had said to her 3 hours earlier. I am on my way, he said. Henry parked at the back of the restaurant, lifted his sleeping daughter into his arms, and carried her inside through the service entrance. Amanda met him at the door. There is a quiet corner near the staff break area. She can rest there. I promise we will keep an eye on her. Henry laid Bonnie on a small couch in the staff lounge, tucked Mr. Buttons against her cheek, and pulled a clean apron over her like a blanket. She did not stir. He kissed her forehead. Then he picked up his old metal toolbox, the one with his initials scratched into the corner, and walked into the kitchen. Clinton Mercer turned and saw him. The color drained from his face, and then surged back in red. "What is he doing here?" "He is here to help, Clinton," Amanda said. "He is the man from earlier." "Get him out." Clinton, the dinner is collapsing. Gus, the head chef, stepped between them. "You have 10 minutes before I tell the floor we cannot serve the second course," Gus said to Clinton. "Pick a fight, or let the man work." Clinton's jaw moved. He stepped aside. Henry did not look at him. He walked over to the central range, listened to the soft humming of the exhaust hood, placed the back of his hand near a steel panel to feel the temperature, knelt down and opened the access cover. He worked the way a doctor works on a patient. He listened. He smelled the air for the faint, sweet odor of an overheated wire. He checked the fittings on the pressure gauge. He felt the angle of the safety valve. And then he stopped. "Who serviced this last?" A young technician spoke up. "We had a maintenance check 3 days ago. Did they replace the safety valve?" "They might have." Henry pointed. "It is installed backwards." The kitchen fell silent. "The valve has a flow direction," he said. "It was reversed during the service. The system is reading the pressure in the wrong direction, and it is locking itself out as a safety measure. If you had forced it, you could have created a real hazard." Gus crossed himself. Henry asked everyone to step back. He shut down the auxiliary lines. He carefully removed the valve, inspected the gasket, reseated the valve in the correct orientation, and tightened the fittings by hand. He cycled the pressure slowly. The control panel, after a long moment, blinked once and reset itself. The lights on the exhaust hood went green. "Let it stabilize for 10 minutes before you load it," Henry said, wiping his hands on an old rag. "Do not slam it back to full output. You will be fine." Gus stared at him. "You just saved this dinner. You saved it," Henry said. "I just turned a valve." He picked up his toolbox, walked back toward the staff lounge to check on Bonnie, and did not say a single word to Clinton on the way past. What Henry did not know was that from the doorway of the small office near the kitchen, Astrid Caldwell had been watching every minute of it. The second course went out on time. The plates returned clean. The tone in the dining room shifted from polite anxiety to genuine pleasure. Glasses were refilled. Compliments were passed to the kitchen. Clinton Mercer, sensing the danger had passed, stepped into the dining room and took credit. He told one of the investors that his team had handled a small technical hiccup behind the scenes, that everything had been under control the entire time. He smiled. He allowed himself to believe he had won. That was when the lights in the dining room dimmed slightly, and a single spotlight came up over the small platform at the front of the room where the company logo was displayed. A woman walked onto the platform. She was wearing the elegant black dress with a soft V neckline that had been hidden beneath an apron all evening. Her dark brown hair, which had been tied back in a tight knot, was now loose around her shoulders. The room saw her, and the room did not know what to make of her, because she carried herself like someone who owned the floor. She lifted a small microphone. "Good evening," she said. "My name is Astrid Caldwell. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Caldwell Table Group." A breath went through the dining room. Clinton's smile fell off his face. Bernie Langford, in mid-sentence at his table, slowly lowered his glass. 3 days ago, Astrid said, I came to this branch as a temporary employee. I told the manager I had been transferred from another location. I put on an apron. I pinned on a name tag with a fake name, and I worked beside the staff who you have been served by tonight. I did this because for the past 6 months, this restaurant has produced more anonymous employee complaints than any other location in our company, and not one has been honestly investigated. She paused. Earlier this evening, I was the waitress who served table 7. I poured a bottle of wine for a guest at that table. That guest swung his elbow and knocked over his own glass. He then accused me of spilling it. The manager of this branch did not ask a single question. He did not check the camera. He ordered me, in front of every guest in this dining room, to apologize for something I did not do. She let the word sit. I considered ending the moment by saying my name. I did not. I wanted to see how far this branch had drifted from the values our company was founded on. She turned her head, and her eyes found Henry standing quietly in the kitchen doorway, holding Bonnie, who had woken up in his arms and was staring out at the lights with sleepy wonder. And in those 4 minutes, Astrid continued, in a dining room of 40 people, only one person stood up. He did not know who I was. He had nothing to gain. He was a working father with a sick child, and he stood up because his daughter asked him why a stranger had to apologize for something she did not do. I would like the cameras at table 7 to be displayed. A screen on the side wall came to life. The footage was clear. It showed Astrid setting down the bottle. It showed Bernie gesturing with his arm. It showed his elbow striking the glass. It showed the wine spilling without Astrid ever touching it. The dining room watched in absolute silence. "Mr. Langford," Astrid said, "you are no longer welcome in any restaurant operated by Caldwell Table Group. Effective immediately. Your name has been added to a list shared with every branch in this company. I would like you to leave now." Bernie stood. He opened his mouth. He looked at the room. He looked at the screen. He closed his mouth and walked out without his coat. "Mr. Mercer." Clinton turned slowly. "You are terminated, effective immediately, for abuse of authority, suppression of staff complaints, and the cultivation of a workplace culture that contradicts every value this company stands for. Human Resources will be in touch. Please surrender your keys." Clinton swallowed. He set the keys on the nearest table without a word and walked out of the dining room. Astrid lowered the microphone. The dining room was silent for one long second. Then someone began to clap. Then someone else. Then the entire room. She stepped down from the platform and walked across the dining room, past her stunned investors, past the table where Bernie's wine glass still stood, past her own employees, who were watching her with eyes that shone. She stopped in front of Henry. "I do not know how to thank you," she said. Henry shifted Bonnie on his hip. "I did not do it for thanks. That is exactly why I am thanking you." She paused, and chose her next words with care. "You did not protect me because I was powerful. You protected me because you thought I had no power at all. That is the only kind of kindness that matters. Our company is launching a new internal training program for service culture. I do not need someone who can read a manual to me. I need someone who knows what dignity feels like from underneath. I would like to offer you a role as an advisor." Henry blinked. "I am a kitchen equipment repairman. You repaired our central range in 30 minutes, Astrid said. "But before that, you repaired something this place had lost a long time ago. Courage to treat human beings like human beings." Bonnie, who had been watching the tall woman in the black dress with very wide eyes, finally found her voice. "Daddy," she whispered. "Is the waitress lady a princess?" The dining room laughed, softly, gratefully, the way people laugh when something heavy is finally lifted. Astrid knelt down, until she was at Bonnie's eye level, and she smiled. "No, sweetheart," she said. "I am just somebody who got very lucky tonight. Your daddy reminded me that there are still good people in the world." Henry looked at his daughter. He looked at the tall woman kneeling in front of her. He looked at the dining room, full of people who an hour earlier would not have noticed if he had walked out forever, and who were now standing, applauding a working father in scuffed boots. He thought of his late wife, and he thought she would have liked this evening. He nodded, once, slowly. "All right," he said. "I will help." He carried Bonnie out of the dining room with her small hand wrapped around the collar of his shirt and Mr. Buttons tucked under her chin. Outside, the rain had stopped. The streetlights were warm and yellow. Henry buckled Bonnie into the back seat of his truck, kissed her forehead, and got in behind the wheel. "Daddy," she said sleepily. "Yes, sweetheart. Did we do the right thing?" Henry looked into the rearview mirror. At the small face he loved more than any other face in the world. "We did, baby," he said. "We did." He started the truck. He pulled out into the quiet street. And in the warm corner table by the window of Caldwell Table, where 40 minutes earlier, a young waitress had stood with trembling hands while a dining room pretended not to see, a single white napkin lay folded into the shape of a small bird, left there by someone who had finally remembered that kindness, when given without hope of reward, is the only kindness that ever truly counts.